Hey everyone, this is CoPact's Dynamic Duo series where results are guaranteed. Today I have the pleasure of having Maddy Niebauer on, CEO and founder of vChief. Maddy, how's it going?
Hi, Zach. Thanks so much for having me here. Doing great.
I love it. I love it. Well, I always love to start these sessions off with a little bit of background. I'd love to hear your career journey, what pushed you to becoming a founder, and ultimately establishing vChief.
Yeah. So I started my career in the Peace Corps, and then I ran a tutoring center for a few years, went to business school, and then I was a strategy consultant for nonprofits at an organization called Bridgespan that spun off from Bain and Company. And then I became a chief of staff, and that's sort of the beginning, the seed that was planted for vChief. So I was a chief of staff at Teach for America, and I supported one of their senior leaders for a number of years. And then she decided to start a new nonprofit. So I helped her in the very early stages of that. And then she left to start it. I moved into a new role. She learned she couldn't live without me. So she came back and was like, "Would you moonlight with me for 5 or 10 hours a week in addition to your other full time job?" And I was excited to do that. And that was really the seed that sparked the creation of vChief, because I realized, we have leaders who might have a need for a chief of staff but not have the workload or the budget to support a full-time person, and I didn't even know the word fractional at the time, but ultimately it became vChief, which is a fractional solution for senior level positions. And we started with just chiefs of staff, and we've since expanded to COOs and CFOs and a number of other roles. And I think what we found was we just created a great pool of talent, and clients kept coming up to us for different things. And so as time has gone on, vChief's been around for almost 10 years at this point. We have pivoted to meet the needs of our clients, but that's a little bit on how we got there in the first place.
I love it. It's always great when a founder's story comes from their background or a realization of just a market need. One thing that I always like to talk about, I mean, I think where the world is headed with AI and automation and transformation, it's all becoming, fractional work is becoming much more popular and actually sometimes preferred work. When you're evaluating a candidate to be in your network or to potentially serve your clients, are there different things you're looking from hiring someone full time compared to a fractional filled role?
Yeah, it's that different in terms of, like, if I were going to hire for a full-time chief of staff versus a fractional chief of staff. I mean, yes, like when you're in a fractional, the one place I think there is a difference is when you're in a fractional role, you're often supporting multiple clients, right? Not always, but often. And so being able to manage the workload and be able to, when you're in a client services business, like, people need to know you are there when they need you, whether you are theirs 40% for 40 hours a week or not, right? And so I think finding people who know how to balance that, both in terms of like the communication it requires from clients, but also just managing their own time. And typically our consultants, many of them work for us and for themselves or for other folks. And so, just figuring out how to balance all of those things, I think is one of the biggest things. But otherwise, it's really just finding people who are excellent in that role, because if they're going to be excellent in it full time, then typically they'll be excellent in it in a fractional capacity.
Makes a ton of sense. Cream of the crop talent, just somebody that is interested and willing to juggle and balance multiple clients, multiple
Yeah.
opportunities all at once. So
Yeah.
that's good to know. And I think even in a full-time position, that's becoming more the requirement with how cross-functional everything is. You have
So
tons of
much
different priorities. It's critical.
attention dragged in 50 different directions. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, moving on and going a little deeper on vChief, I'd love to hear a little bit about your mission, the expertise. What's the secret sauce that vChief brings to the table that clients should be potentially aware about?
Yeah. So we really focus on providing top-notch on-demand talent to our clients. And as I said, we do that in a number of different executive level roles, but clients might have a need because someone's on maternity leave or someone left unexpectedly, or, they have a low level need that just doesn't require a full-time person, but it's sort of an ongoing thing. And so I think, our mission is to support them in a way that they can't imagine living without us, in the same way that my first boss did, right? And often, we will help clients get to a stage that they don't need us anymore, either because they're moving to a full-time role or they've found other internal solutions. So it's not that we're trying to keep them forever. It's just that we want to work in a way that makes us feel indispensable. And I think the sort of secret sauce that comes with that is that, we have this ready base of talent, really top talent. And so compared to a client going out and looking for that person on their own, that's going to take a long time, or vetting someone who's not in a network. And, we can be on the ground really quickly. Like I've had clients, who are like, I want to start yesterday. And, less than a week later, they have their person. So I think an ability to jump in and move really quickly, and then also just provide top-notch talent.
I think that's a great point. One area that I'm curious about for you guys is how much are you involved in the growth of the network in terms of the person's skill set? Because you know what a great chief of staff looks like. You know
Yeah.
your client better than anyone else. How much of a leg up is that when you're actually staffing somebody in that fractional interim role? And how much are you seeing development of your network and growth from your people?
Yeah. So I think what's interesting is I am of the opinion that like most of these executive level roles can be done across different industries, right? And so someone who's coming from, maybe they come from consumer goods, can apply a lot of the same lessons in a tech company. But there is often some, on the ground knowledge that you have to learn, right? So what's nice about our talent network is it's really broad and touches a ton of different industries. So if like industry knowledge is important to clients, we can definitely find people who have that in our pool. But we also, I would say the folks in our pool are really passionate about excelling in their roles. So to the degree that that requires learning more of the industry or other things that they don't know. When we hire for people who are going to be great at that role. So I know that their technical skills are going to be there. If it's a CFO, they've been a CFO before, right? I'm not going to send someone who's a COO into a CFO role. Like that's not the kind of growth we're looking for. But we want to hire people who are ready to hit the ground running. I don't want them to have to learn things, but I want to hire people who want to learn things to be even better in their role. And we do have, because we have this large network of talent, they do have the opportunity to do trainings through us to learn additional skills. And so that is important to us, but more important to us is to find people who already have the skills and who are eager to learn what they need to excel in that role.
That's so many great points. I really appreciate it. One I want to double down on with you because I'm a big believer of it as well is in being industry agnostic. There is value in learning a specific industry, understanding in it,
Yeah,
but that aptitude and willingness to learn is where some of the greatest innovations come from is cross industry. You learn something,
totally.
there's a way to do it. You think about this industry differently. And I
Yeah.
think post COVID, I just feel like we've taken a step back in the US specifically of I want 15 years of pharma or manufacturing experience and not valuing that cross-functional capability and really looking at the talent. So really happy to hear vChief believes in that as well.
Yeah. And we also just listen to our clients. Like if they say like this is the most important thing to me, then we go find people who have that, right? Whether that's industry experience or, very specific functional expertise. Like I need someone who knows this CRM system or whatever it is.
No, I think that's that balancing point of best candidate ultimately with the right skill sets and the must-haves and the mandates. And that's why staffing is and recruiting and fractional roles is half art, half science. It's not a
Yeah,
perfect science by any means.
absolutely.
Jumping into kind of the impact and the results. That's what CoPact's all about. We're your outcome partner. We're focused on turning clients' priorities into measurable wins. When you think about the measurable wins vChief provides, what are some of the metrics, KPIs, or things that you're looking at to evaluate if you're successfully driving value for your clients?
Yeah. So what's interesting is this varies so much from client to client and role to role. And especially if you look at the chief of staff role, which is what we started with and what I would say still the bulk of our work is, like what a chief of staff does and what they need to accomplish looks so different from engagement to engagement, right? And so even if I think about like the people who I have been a chief of staff for and their peers and their chiefs of staff, we all had totally different jobs. Like one of them was like getting people's external speaking engagements, and another one was like running deep internal deep dives with like 6 different sub teams. So when I look at something like measurable progress, like we are absolutely data driven and that's incredibly important to us. But what the actual KPIs are totally varies, and we have no skin in the game of what those should be, right? Like yes, we can make suggestions of like these are the things that would tell me if like this is your end goal, whether you're getting there and what sort of the mile markers are on the way. But it looks really different across engagements, right? If you have a chief of staff versus a COO versus a CFO versus an HR person, obviously those are going to have different types of KPIs, and even within one role can look really different across organizations. But we do needs assessment when we start with the client, and we really understand like what are they trying to accomplish, what does success look for like for them in the short term and the long term, what piece of the puzzle are we playing, because obviously like we're not the only person moving that forward, like how do we pull in other people and other teams to make sure that we're on the right track, you know? And that really sets the roadmap, and so it's really unique and customized for each client that we work with.
I really appreciate that. And that candor and that transparency is really critical because I would say talent of like the verticals and of the core areas of partners we work with, talent is sometimes the least quantitative in terms of actual end results and KPIs, but it can be the most impactful. So by
Yeah.
aligning it to each and every client needs and their roadmap, you really hit the home run without over engineering it, which is a key thing we try and do at CoPact as well. Is like if it's simple, like is this a good person? Is
Yes.
this a good fit? Is this moving you forward? Let's have quarterly touch points and talk about what's working, what's not, and we're going to find success and value. So that works perfectly fine in our model as well. And I'm trying to find more and more ways to quantify talent, but sometimes it's just qualitative. Are we moving this forward? Is this a good fit in our culture? Is this getting us from point A to point B? Sometimes it's that simple.
Yeah, absolutely.
Diving deeper into that, any specific success stories? I'm sure you've had tons with all of the placements and the fractional roles, but any
Yeah.
success stories that jump out that you think would be valuable to share?
Yeah. So there was a healthcare company that we were supporting, and they had a senior leader in an operations role who was leaving, and the rest of the leadership team was really overwhelmed with that transition and like how are they going to formalize their processes and capture the institutional knowledge when this like key person is leaving. That was happening at the same time that they were trying to staff up and grow their team so that the leadership team had what they needed to achieve their goals. And so what was great was our vChief stepped in and sort of immediately started to create order out of the chaos that was in that moment. And, you know, the client said that, you know, we had these shifting priorities and this staffing model, and she really like came in and nailed what needed to be figured out and moved that forward, and then gave them the right level of support where they needed it. And so you know, they said that within the first 6 months of the engagement, the chief of staff was really able to capture that institutional knowledge in lots of ways and like really streamline their processes, outline their like risk and compliance issues and all sorts of other stuff. And so she did that whole piece, but then she also, you know, built KPIs for 3 other departments and helped them add 6 new roles so that the senior leader team could, you know, sort of lift themselves up out of the weeds and the chaos, and they can focus on the strategic stuff. And I think the way that she went in there and both sort of took care of the immediate problem of this person leaving, as well as the ongoing problem of like, we need to grow and hire and start thinking about how we spend our time differently as executives, is a really good example of how we think of things both as like, what are the fires we need to put out? And how do we set you up for success in the long term?
A great example. And the that type of role and thing is like a lot of senior leaders and a lot of people just are like, I'll just bear through it. I'll just do it. I'll get it done. I'll
Yeah,
push
and
through it
then
versus
overwork and then burn out and all the things.
and not doing it well. And then not doing your main job well as well, of like having somebody focused and dedicated and fresh to come in
Yeah,
with that perspective and be that connector.
man, you are speaking my language. It's hard because I think it's hard for people to really like let go of stuff sometimes. And they're like, well, I'll just do it. And I know that I can get it done. But yeah, like you said, anything that you're doing is taking away from something else you could be doing that might be more aligned with what's going to lead you to success.
Through. Well, this was so amazing. Last thing, closing call to action. Anything you want to leave the audience with?
Yeah, don't have to do it all. Like there is a better way. I grew my company to an Inc. 5000 company, 5 years on the list. I have never worked more than 25 hours a week on average, right? Like it is so critical to me to see leaders really like envision what their lives could be, or even like what the growth of their business could be if they really zero in on their zone of genius and let the other stuff be delegated to other people, be automated by AI, really free the path for them to not only see like amazing growth at work, but also like so much more freedom in your life.
Zone of genius. I'm going to steal that from you.
It's a good one.
That's a good one liner for sure. Awesome. Well, Maddy, thank you so much for the time. Absolute pleasure. So happy to be partnering with vChief and excited to get you introduced to more and more clients.
We are too. Thank you so much, Zach. It's great to have you as partners.
This was CoPact's Dynamic Duo series where results are guaranteed. Thank you.